I gotta ask, can everybody hear this or not?
Pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that badly handled. Just inject a little bleach into your arm.
All right, there we go.
Right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out a position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination of us left with and corporate greed is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, the bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world, he's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, the fact of the matter is that we pride ourselves.
All right, I do want to give some rules on this. I'm going to have to stop every once in a while and kind of cut everything off. And honestly, what Trump was saying in regards to the economy, it was getting better. Our economy hasn't been great for a very, very long time, and that was just because of poor decision making. And obviously, this is all not just one person. It's actually preceding people, preceding presidents. In fact, even our 401k and benefits that we would get at retirement really won't cover our full retirement because we are a nation in debt. And I get what Biden is saying, I get what Trump is saying, but honestly, I feel like if Trump stayed in office, or if he gets back in office, he is gonna fix the economy for the most part. I just kind of want to hear what they're saying. Obviously, maybe we're gonna wait to the breaks.
Countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China,
I don't know,
and many others. In all fairness to China, it's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. Now, He inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet.
Or my buddy Sim.
The oil and
What's
gas
up, man?
right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will.
Okay, so in regards to the vaccine, I'm kind of wishy-washy about that. I really do understand why they mandated it out. Like, certain things have to be mandated out, because that's how you fix it, right? Especially in the greater scheme of things. However, since it kept on evolving, we couldn't keep up with it, and doing that mandate right away was just not well, received. And the greater aspect of that is that it's kind of snowballed in on itself because of this huge mandate that went out for, okay, you got to get the COVID vaccine. But meanwhile, the virus kept on evolving faster than we can pump out a good vaccine to fix it. So I am going to say that right now, that it's not, it was bullshit to begin with. And a lot of things that came out during that whole thing, like, for instance, it was created in China, in a Chinese research lab, came out later this year. In this year, it came out, and I think Dr. Fauci is actually on trial in regards to something like that. Yeah.
Child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because
I just
all of these
remembered
people
I
are
have to
coming
get a
in.
drink.
They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on.
So I'll be
Social
right back.
Security.
I'm
They're
going to
gonna
leave this
destroy
running for
Social
now.
Security. This man
And
is going
I'm
to
going to go
single-handedly
grab
destroy
a
Social
beer.
Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. what we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided, supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, all right,
guys, I'm back.
On what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing.
So let me actually make a commentary on this. This is actually kind of true, right? Now, I'm all for having open, well, not really having open borders. I'm all for having immigrants come in, right? As long as they are legal, right? As long as they are legal and coming in. And what's been happening on the news, as far as I can tell, a lot of illegal immigrants that are coming in through the border are committing atrocities to people. Like, we can even take a look at New York City right now, and it's an absolute devastation
This
because
is the
of
same
all
topic.
the immigrants
7
that are
states
there.
have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. That Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only a woman's life is in danger. She's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period, period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholar.
All right, I have to keep cutting in here because otherwise I'll get like striked. So here's the thing, and in regards to abortion, I do support it and I don't support it, especially in the later months. If you're in early process of the whole thing, right? And I can see, make it legal, that's fine. And I do agree, if it's a danger to the mother's health, right? If it's a dangers to the mother's health, then obviously makes total sense. But if they decided to carry it all the way to that point, then at the last second decide to abort it, nah, I'm not into that. That is a giant red no. So,
because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where, when he was president,
Trump also got endorsed by the Border Patrol.
Put him in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed
the border
law,
is a fucking mess.
I changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in.
Oh, my God.
And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that.
They did.
They endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming.
Okay, so in regards to the whole border thing, the Border Patrol that actually did support Trump, and I don't know if they're supporting Biden right now. I would have to look into that. But in regards to the whole border being open, it's just get a person coming. There has been a lot of people coming in through the southern border that do not have good intentions. Yes, some of them are family, right? And okay, I understand that. And in regards to that, they should not be allowed to cross the border. Anyway, hold on.
Deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and he just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast, because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all, and he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved, choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did, and I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden.
All right, I am going to talk a little bit more about this border thing, because this is actually something I know a bit about, not a lot, but a bit. So in regards to the whole border thing, there is kind of like a border crisis going on. And this is caused by having an open border. Now, I'm not saying we should just arbitrarily close our border either. I am for, allowing migrants in, but at the same time, with having our border open, right, as it is right now, what's going on is that we are getting a lot of terrorists and other stuff coming in, people that are not good for the country. We're getting military-age men. We're getting, these mafia people, from Mexico and such. Was it M18? I forget what the title is. And those are the people that are actually conducting crime and like importing weapons, importing people. And there are quite literally trees where they go and are young girls, and then while they're trying to get them to the United States, it's just like a payment for their services. So very young girls, we're talking about very, very young girls. And yes, that has been documented many times before.
Like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history.
Biden should
American
apologize for the
history. And now
laptop
their
because
family,
they
the only sacred
squashed
obligation
that,
we have as
and
a
now
country
they're
is to
doing
care
this
for
whole
our veterans
investigation
at home
now.
and their families
And
equip them
it's
when
just
they go to
not
war.
that is
That's what
so
we're doing.
bullshit.
That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
I feel like the
Top of
current
foreign
administration.
policy, I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him.
God,
that we've
Trump,
ever had.
answer
They
the
can't
question,
stand him.
please,
So
man.
let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost. But he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump, as
I never
come back
said
to you
that.
for 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
Acceptable. No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you.
Good
Moving on
evening,
to the Middle East.
Blockbuster.
In
Just so you know, we
October,
are going
Hamas
to talk a little
attacked
bit,
Israel, killing
but
more
we're
than
just kind of
1,000
like watching
people
it, and I'll
taking
cut in
hundreds
every once
of
in a while to
hostages.
talk.
Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas. Number one, they're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so there are 2 different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
I've
never heard so much foolishness. This is the guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO?
Okay, so I know I'm cutting in right now, but I do have want to make a point here. First of all, with all like foreign wars, I feel like we should stay out of it because we tend to stick our noses in to other countries' businesses, and we are not in a good place for it. Now, I do want to support and like help out the Ukrainians, Ukrainian citizens, and other people, but I am going to say though that what's going on in Palestine with Iran and the Palestinians, regardless of which side you like support, I think it's just you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And honestly, I wouldn't want to deal with that with a 10-foot pole. Because honestly, everything in the Middle East seems like they're constantly in war over religious bouts, and I feel like it's more trying to, you got to negotiate with the religious leaders to really come to an understanding with each other. And that's a whole religious thing that I could go into at a different date. But let's continue with this.
Same size as the United States. And they were no cars, no, they don't want anything that we have. But we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question. Would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time? And I said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor in writing turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it, too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
President Biden?
Look, he encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. But he went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court. And they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing. And these people should be in jail. And they should be the ones that are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, You ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people when they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities. You go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that. They saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing. The Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody just went in and broke.
Okay, so I'm going to make a comment on this. January 6th was a travesty. Yes, they did break into the Capitol building, and I do agree there was property damage. However, when Trump got into office as well, people did, go on riots and break things and destroy things. And honestly, he did say on Twitter that, hey, don't do anything, don't destroy anything. He tried to calm the people down. And yes, I believe there is footage of him saying, don't accept the election results, because there was a lot of fishy things going on with that election. Especially if I remember down south, at the one polling center, counting center, they actually got all the reporters out of the building, then started counting again after pulling trays out from underneath tables. And, that's when somebody turned around and said, hey, look, they're counting again. And they rushed, and this was actually all confirmed on camera. And in Pennsylvania, they said mail-in voting wasn't, legal in accordance with their constitution. But they said, oh, it's too bad. It's already been counted. The election is done. So, yes, there was a lot of fishiness going on with last year's election. I would not doubt that this has happened before in either party from either end. But it was so unsightly, and we were really, really informed on it because obviously we're more connected than ever before.
You could change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions?
Okay, so in regards to what's going on with Trump and his crimes, with that one lady, that was basically over money from years and years ago, and they dragged that up in order for it to be executed out in public to try to prevent him from running. They said, hey, you can't do this, I kind of missed the whole point there. Never mind.
Case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam, and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road.
So I'm just going to cut off here and basically just going to hit this off. Honestly, I feel like both sides of the aisle is absolute travesty. You know, they both are just entirely bad, regardless if you're red or blue. They both have done things. There have been countless things that could have been used for lawsuits against Democrats. The same thing with Republicans. And I honestly do agree that we should prosecute every single one of corrupt politicians. Unfortunately, in doing so, we would lose pretty much all of our politicians except for maybe a select few. And honestly, I feel like we really got to go back to like the common man getting into office because, honestly, even if you really think about it, back in the day, we voted in generals and we voted in, like career politicians like Ben Franklin's, Abraham Lincoln, and stuff like that. But they were doing actual good for the country, and I feel like we gotten away from that. And right now we're kind of like choosing the lesser of two evils in our mind, and it's bad. In modern politics, it's absolute travesty, and I feel entirely bad on this. Okay, and let me get back on.
Run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question, the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that. And he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden?
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
All right, I didn't know they were going to kind of do hold-offs and kind of in-between things. So let's kind of talk about what's good. So they talked about foreign policies. They talked about, the border a little bit, and obviously they talked about Trump's crimes and a bunch of different things. And honestly, here's my commentary on it on a whole. Modern politics is an absolute travesty. I said this before. It is an absolute travesty, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. It's terrible. I feel like there is no middle of the road anymore. Like, I do support some policies and I don't support other policies. Some of them are going to be red, some of them are going to be blue. And I do kind of consider myself a Republican, But at the same time, I do see some merit in some Democrat policies. Like foreign aid, immigrants coming in, helping them out the best we can. But at the same time, the amount of evidence that we got backing up all these situations where young people getting R-ed, R-word and M-word, and then throughout the country. Control Delete backspace you there. Yeah. Oh. Oh yeah. So and that's where kind of things are getting kind of fishy. With at least with the border. Again, I don't mind people coming into the country as long as they're legally coming into the country. If they're coming into the country illegally, then I have a problem with them. Now, in regards to our border is a mess. I think the only safe border right now is Canada. And honestly, I feel like it's only people that are leaving the United States and going to Canada right now because they just want to escape the United States. Or they're coming up through America to go to Canada. And it's honestly everybody that's kind of like south of the border that are having issues on a political and national scale that is causing people to flee, right? This is the same thing we are having issues with Russia and Ukraine and Finland and Poland and Ireland. All those countries are close together because where are all these immigrants going to go? They're just going to go to the next border over because that is the closest border for them to go because that is how you escape, especially a war-torn country or like crime, like rampant crime and stuff like that. That's the only thing you can do. You gotta escape to another country, especially if your politicians are the issue. And honestly, that there are certain points in my days and times where I'm sitting here and I'm like, God dang it, why is my country doing this? Because we tend to stick our noses into everybody's businesses, and I feel like we fund every war that's going on out there. Hey, look, you are having a war with so and so, right? Here's a bajillion of US dollars and just add it on to our debt. We already have a huge debt going on in our country, and we cannot pay that back right now. They cannot pay us back. If we all went to the bank and said, give me my money, our country cannot pay us back. Our 401ks mean absolutely nothing because they're going to be paying us nothing. So, and that's where I'm having a problem because if we're funding all these wars, in Ukraine and the Middle East, if the Middle East is a clusterfuck on a whole huge scale, they should be paying us to help fund the war against, the gangs that are coming up through Mexico and Venezuela and Chile and all the other South American countries that are having issues. And we're back to the debate.
The fact of the matter is there's more small black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two,
there has been a lot of black businesses that have been destroyed in blue cities as well.
Number three, we're providing housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce black child care costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those child care protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family first-time home buyers should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those black families and those black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, the ACA has increased. I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. You find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You've 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing with the environment. He pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able to, the United States can't get its under control? One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people to learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
so every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent, but the biggest thing will do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare, both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is we're in a situation where we talk about education for black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants by another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face. About so many other things, too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden.
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now, all of a sudden, he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. we probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We are the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody. Number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up or go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history. One through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you, and they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that we're importing. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. The middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low, because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues, said, "Don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically." No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, because this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say it's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly, as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, but Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people. The whole idea of computer chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us, all of our allies, and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, who he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag.
Are they seriously talking about golf? Just
The
freaking
6 handicap of all.
I was at 8 handicap, 8. But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
you know
not
how
act
many
like
rounds-
children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
turn
Let's not act like children.
You
to
are
a
child.
specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
I think he
Just
did
to finish
say
this,
yes,
if I might.
as long as it was
Russia. They took a lot of land from Bush.
legal. You know,
They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land,
yeah,
nothing.
I believe Trump did say that yes, he would accept the results if it was legal and legitimate, which I do agree. I would accept the results if it was legitimate and legal. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go nuts and be like, oh, I'm going to storm the Capitol or I'm going to destroy businesses or whatever because of so and so, you know. And I know that happens a lot from both sides, but it's just. That's nonsense. I'm hoping that they get to a break soon because there is a lot to unpack here in regards to Ukraine, fentanyl, you know, and childcare and all this other stuff. So there is a lot to unpack.
cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate live.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple things here. First of all, the whole thing with, opioids, drug addiction, stuff like that. And I do think there is like a little bit of this and that in there. Because I feel like on both sides of the fence that it's not just illegal immigrants like gangs importing it. It's also local people that are making it. And honestly, I do feel like a good way to do it or to control it or to kind of get it under control is to actually make things legal up to a certain amount. And that way you get all these illegal drug manufacturing people to kind of basically lose their funding because then all that money is now going to legitimate businesses. Like, for instance, cannabis or weed, right? Look how that is growing. There's many farmers that are growing it. There's many distributors, the different brands and everything. I used to drive by a place all the time, to and from work, that was selling cannabis all the time, every single live long day. Now, fentanyl is a very bad drug. In fact, I think one of the cartels down in Mexico, they said, if you are caught with fentanyl, they will execute you. And that is, if I remember this was actually a very long time ago. And now, in regard to childcare, I feel like that is actually connected with our economy. Now, regardless if you're black, white, green, blue, orange, tan or whatever color or religion. It's all about getting the economy fixed so that we can afford that. Now, way back in the day, we're talking about like 60s, 70s, you can live off of one household income. Now you cannot do that. I can't even afford moving out at my previous pay because of the inflation that happened with the market. And even before that, I couldn't afford to move out because it was just absolutely terrible. I wasn't making the right amount of money to be able to afford to move out at that time. And even now, still can't do it. And because the money wasn't there and the economy wasn't bad. Now, if we had a lower economy and I was making the pay that was, then obviously I would have been able to move out and live by myself. In fact, if I did move out way back when I did actually making a lot of money, I probably would have had to move back in with my parents just for the simple fact that this economy blows. Now, in regards, so that is something that we got to take into consideration. The economy is actually what would drive us to actually be able to afford childcare, regardless again what race, color, ethnicity, whatever you are, and it's not just for blacks, it's for white people because white people can get into bad situations too, as well as Spanish people, Arabians, Palestinians, Iraqis, Canadians. Everybody can get into this terrible, terrible thing. So we got to fix the economy first. And we are in a massive amount of debt. And we keep giving, like I said this before, we keep giving money to foreign powers, right? And in regards to the whole, climate activity, the countries that should be pouring more money into this, right, is the countries that are causing the most damage, right? They should be dedicating more money than us to do it. And yes, I understand that they actually pushed out for like electric vehicles, right? And we actually don't know about this. Everybody's against electric vehicles. I'm not against electric vehicles. I do think they should have pushed for hybrid vehicles first to get everybody acquainted with electrical devices, electrical vehicles, then switched over to electric. This is much longer plan because we don't have the right infrastructure to support all the electric vehicles as of right now. Now, we do have to do a lot more incentives in regards to more cleaner energies, such as, solar power, wind power, water power. And honestly, I think we should do some nuclear power as well, because that is actually kind of clean energy as well, in comparison to burning fossil fuels like coal. Which a lot of people are against because when you think nuclear, you think, explosions. There are cases that do happen, like Chernobyl, but we do have a lot of procedures to kind of mitigate that as best as we can, like any other situation. Even like because even that one town in Pennsylvania, I forget what the town was called, they had a coal fire in a coal mine. To this day, the place is still burning because they had a simple fire. That could happen. Devastating. It could happen to anyone or anything. So actually, let's get back to the debate because they're really cutting these a little short.
We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like. Even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
Okay, I guess the debate is over, and they're going to go to an analysis portion of the debate, I guess, and analyzing everything that was said.
All right, after 90 minutes, that is now the end of the first presidential debate of the 2024 cycle, a rematch between former President Trump and President Biden.
I really do want to
First
hear
time the
what
two men
these idiots
have squared off
would
face to
say.
face since the fall of 2020. You're watching
I'm
PBS
calling them
News
idiots,
coverage.
and
Thanks for
meanwhile,
staying
I'm
with
probably
us.
an idiot
Let's
too.
bring in our panel now. We're joined by White House correspondent Laura Barone Lopez, political correspondent Lisa Desjardins, Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter, Democratic strategist Guy Cecil, and Republican strategist Kevin Madden. And watching the debate in Atlanta, Georgia, is Pamela Kirkland of Georgia Public Broadcasting. With a welcome to all of you. Laura, we'll start with you because Democrats were desperate for President Biden to put on a show of vitality and mental sharpness amid questions about his age. Your phone has been blowing up for the last hour and a half as you've been texting with your sources. What's the word from the campaign and the Democrats with whom you're in contact?
Well, the Democrats that I've been in contact with were not necessarily happy with the president's performance. They, at the beginning were really nervous, thought that he did not get off to a strong start. They felt as though he got a bit stronger as the night went on, a bit more clear, drew more contrast as the night went on. But again, they wanted him to be able to strike really strong contrast with Trump on immigration, on abortion, on January 6th. And a lot of the folks I talked to don't feel as though he necessarily did that in a way that is going to reach the voters, either whether it's motivating his base or also reach those independent moderate voters. The campaign, on the other hand, a campaign source was texting me saying that their internal polling, this is, of course, campaign polling, but their live internal polling, the dials as they were listening to voters as the debate was going on, they said that internal polling showed that when Trump personally attacked Biden, called him the worst president, or when Trump tried to talk about the suckers and losers comments, which he made regarding veterans, which his chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he said, that when Trump tried to talk about that voters didn't like Trump's responses on those things, that they weren't happy with that at all. And that they also were not, voters turned against Trump when they heard him talking about January 6th and the exchange between Biden and Trump on January 6th. And when President Biden called Trump a convicted felon, that also seemed to register poorly for Trump with those voters.
And Lisa, we know you've been covering the Trump campaign. Obviously, it's the job of every campaign and surrogate to spin this in the best possible light for the candidate at the end of the debate. But this was Mr. Trump's first debate this cycle. He did not show up for any of the primary debates. For his first time out, what are you hearing from your sources about how they think he did?
Yeah, neither man has debated really in 4 years. But the Trump team, Republicans, are declaring victory. They think this was a fantastic night for them. They wanted to see Joe Biden look like someone who had a hard time finding his words, and in the beginning debate especially, that was the case. I'm also hearing from Democratic sources, and especially House Democrats, are in a very dark place right now. They are very concerned about what this means for them down ballot. There is, I will say, in the ether, there are some even sort of raising this idea, like, should this be our nominee? Now, this is the worst moment. This is the worst moment. Is it realistic to think there's actually going to be a change in nominee? No, I don't think so. And Democratic leadership that I'm also texting with says, no, that's ridiculous. But that is how bad this moment is. Everyone's saying, of course, that Biden did improve his performance over the course of this debate. But right now you have Democrats really struggling even to form kind of responses to me. Some of them telling me like that they have tears and they're joking, but they say they have tears in their throats about this. I'm also texting with some undecided voters who are saying so far this did not sway them all the way, but universally they're texting me that this was a bad night for Biden and raised their doubts about him. So I'm waiting to see over the next minutes if any of them come to a conclusion. But even those undecided voters, who are the most important ones, also spot what Democrats and Republicans are telling us.
The juror, I actually put a notification in Discord about this.
What we just thought,
I actually put 2 notifications.
The discontent with both candidates going into the debate. What
We're probably going to talk more
for the folks that we call the
after
double
we're done
haters,
after
the people that
this.
say they dislike both candidates, I don't think they're going to walk away saying, you know what, I made up my mind. I like this candidate better than the other one. They're still going to walk away saying, these 2 candidates I still don't find acceptable. The problem for Biden from this debate, and Lisa really hit it on the head, the freak out, the collective freak out from Democrats is at the highest level you can imagine. The response tomorrow is going to be very important to watch, especially from Democratic leaders about what happens next. Remember, he is not officially the nominee until the convention in August. So there will be conversations about this. But I think this is the problem for Biden. It's not that where the double haters or the undecided voters go. It's that the base itself, the donors, the folks who are down ballot, as Lisa pointed out, those are the ones who now are depressed and anxious, and that is not helpful for you this close to an election.
What about that, Guy? Because we should remember it was the Biden campaign that wanted this debate and all but dared Donald Trump to participate because they wanted to draw the contrast, as Laura said, and they wanted to litigate the case as they see it against Donald Trump. In hindsight, was that the right approach? I mean, rate what you saw based in terms of style and policy points.
Yeah, well, I'm reminded that there was a conversation a lot like this in 2000.
It's not a problem,
during President Obama's.
Yeah, if it's not responding for you, I don't know what to say. I actually tried to get Rumble up and running, but I kept on getting an error trying to get on there. I think it's because a lot of people are covering this because obviously Rumble is a more, I guess, a Republican conservative platform in comparison to YouTube. So
when he said things like, he lowered the price of insulin, but also there's a bit of a double standard here. We had a former president say that when he was president, he had H2O, that his solution to the addiction crisis was that they bought a brand new dog that can really do some amazing things. And I think the most important thing for Biden coming out of this was his comments essentially defending the January 6th defendants. And I think that's something you'll see the Biden folks repeatedly say over and over. But there's no question that in total, I think Biden probably won on policy. But in terms of presentation, it was certainly a rough start.
Kevin, I want to get your reaction to what you saw today. And on the issues, this is all unfolding amid an intense national debate over abortion access. We heard Donald Trump say that he personally is for exceptions, but that it should be left up to the states. He says that he personally supports access to mifepristone. Is that a winning argument right now for Republicans, generally speaking?
Well, look, I think first overall on the debate, these things are at their core performances, and the voters at home judge them on presence, energy, command, and in that regard, this was a blowout. I think as you start to drill down and you start to see, like, okay, where did some of the candidates make up some ground on some of the issues? Look, in abortion, I think President Biden was pretty solid. He made his points, Trump made his points, but I don't think that that's going to be what people take away or remember from this debate. I think that's largely going to be litigated on the ground by a lot of activists that are going to be out there, trying to meet as many voters as possible out on in the districts and the counties that really are going to matter. But overall, I think the biggest takeaway from this debate was the sort of enthusiasm that President Biden needed to get from his base activists. Right now, a lot of those activists might not show up tomorrow. Right now, the phone banks might be harder to staff. And that's a huge, huge problem at this juncture in the campaign. So I think that's one of the things that I'm looking for in the next couple of weeks is how does the Biden campaign recalibrate and try to recover from this and start to use issues like abortion to their advantage in driving that base turnout that they're going to need in some of these battleground states.
Let's turn now to Pamela Kirkland from Georgia Public Broadcasting. She's joining us from Atlanta. She's been watching the debate with us in real time. And I understand, Pam, talking to voters there as well. Georgia is obviously critical state, one of about 6 or 7 battlegrounds that we're following. Obviously, President Biden won by fewer than 12,000 votes back in 2020. What are you hearing from folks on the ground about what they were expecting going into the debate and what they took away?
Yeah, Amna, if there's anything that the past few days have shown me going to campaign events here and in Georgia, it's been that both campaigns, the Trump and Biden campaign, are committed to making inroads here in the state. In the run-up to the debate, the Biden campaign held over 200 events, some of them small-scale events like barbecues, a couple debate watch parties, some events with campaign surrogates. The Trump campaign didn't hold quite that many, but they did hold an event yesterday at a barbershop in Atlanta geared toward Black voters that I did attend. Now that the debate's over, what we're waiting to see is whether or not it moved the needle for some of these undecided voters here in Georgia. We spoke with a lot of people at these campaign events who had already made up their mind for the most part. They know who they're voting for in November. But my colleague Sarah Callis was actually at an event yesterday where both campaigns were represented, speaking with undecided voters who said that they were tuning into the debate tonight specifically to see what the candidates were going to say on certain issues that were top of mind for them and if it was going to be enough for them to make a decision. So far, I have not heard from anyone that has said that this debate has swayed them one way or another. But what I do know is that some of the issues that we've heard from Georgia voters that they want to know more about, they want more coverage around, are things like abortion to access, things like access to abortion, things like the economy, as well as political division and democracy. So we're still waiting to see if this debate did indeed move the needle. But I think what is apparent is that at least for both campaigns, they know that Georgia is going to be critical when it comes to determining who's going to be the next president of the United States.
It is indeed. We'll be following your reporting as well. Pamela Kirkland from Georgia Public Broadcasting joining us tonight. Pam, good to see you. Thank you.
Laura Barone Lopez, I want to pick up on a point that Kevin made about the Biden campaign aiming to recalibrate now. I'm reminded of what Vice President Kamala Harris said a few months back. She said in her view, their main competition wasn't Donald Trump. It was, in her words, the couch, meaning voters staying at home because they were apathetic, indifferent, not enthusiastic about this race. What does that look like in a real way for the Biden campaign now to make an overt appeal to base voters, to the winning coalition?
All right, they're going to be talking a lot of back and forth here, so I do want to cut in a little bit here. I feel like I'm still going to vote for who I'm going to vote for, right? But again, I'm trying to be more middle with policies and stuff like that. You know, certain things are going to be highlighted. I just don't know how long these guys are going to freaking chat and what kind of think about this. So I honestly do feel like these were saying that Biden did not get off on a good foot. Trump obviously did right away, but it took him a bit to get off. And honestly, I honestly don't know how I feel about Biden or Trump. So
that's also what the campaign thinks that they're going to be doing, which is that they want to. He's going to be out there in North Carolina, a state that Biden's campaign thinks is maybe gettable, even though it isn't necessarily considered one of the true battlegrounds this year. He's going to be there, President Biden, with the First Lady tomorrow. So I think that it's going to have to be a full court press across the battleground states, as well as really activating the grassroots in terms of the abortion initiatives in battlegrounds like Arizona and Nevada, where we think we will see it on the ballot.
Lisa, there was something that happened at the end of the debate that really struck me. Former President Trump was asked if he would accept the results of the election. He did not explicitly answer. He was asked a second time, and he pivoted to something else entirely. Russia.
Yeah.
He was asked a third time, and then he said the 2020 election was stolen. What does that portend for November?
he's clearly setting up a situation where he can lose and still win, which we saw last time was and is and remains dangerous. The 2020 election was proven to be one of the least fraudulent in American. There's no evidence that there was any level of fraud. In fact, the AP found something like under 500 cases across the entire country of fraudulent votes. So you're right, that's something we have to watch. As to the battleground states, I think it's important to note where President Trump is going tomorrow, which is Chesapeake, Virginia. And what this debate does is it adds some backbone to what seemed like sort of exuberant claims by the former president that he was going to grow the map. He was going to compete in places like Virginia, places like Minnesota, which sounded like you're just trying to get the Democrats to spend money there. This adds a little bit of wind to those sails, and it's very smart timing for his staff to be going to Virginia tomorrow.
Amy, what about that? You think the map does change coming out of this somewhat?
Well, the question really, to me, is whether you're going to see, well, let me put it this way. The map, I think, has changed. This debate was going to, for the Biden campaign, was theoretically going to get the map back to where they wanted it to be. Because essentially, if you look at where this race sits right now, Biden needs to move the numbers in his direction. Where it sits today, Donald Trump is doing about 5 points better than he did in 2020. So essentially, what we're seeing in polling, whether it's in Virginia or New Hampshire or Minnesota, is Biden's doing 5 points worse, or Donald Trump's doing 5 points better than he did in 2020. That makes a state like Virginia that he won, Biden won by 10 points, now more like a 4 or 5 point race. It's closer. And while I don't believe that right now a state like Virginia flips, what it does say is that Trump is the one on the offense. Trump is the one that is able to expand the map. And it's the Biden team, and we've been hearing this from Democrats for a while, the Biden team is really now focused on this tiny, tiny map of, well, we can lose those states in the Sun Belt as long as we win Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan.
But it does matter for Congress. That's a congressional race in Chesapeake, Virginia.
That's
you know
right.
what I'm saying?
And the down ballot consequences.
Oh, well, the down ballot is a whole other.
That's a whole other conversation for another time as well. But Guy, I have to get your take on this. Do you think there will be another debate?
I do.
Yeah?
I do. I don't think there's a change in the map, by the way. I think the map that we had last time is the map we're probably going to have this time. And I just want to go back to one thing. I do think, look, we can lob criticisms. Biden got off to a slow start. He was inartful in wording at the beginning. He had a raspy voice. I don't want to gloss over that we had a former president of the United States defend people that attacked the Capitol, lied about his own lawsuits, and then on top of that said he would not commit to accepting the results of the election. So yes, would I prefer a stronger performance? Obviously so. Would I prefer a president that's not a serial liar, who has 36 felony convictions and defends the attack on the United States Capitol that put lives in danger? I think the case there is a much stronger one.
A few seconds left, Kevin. Those remain.
We saw the last
right?
presidential debate of 2024. I don't think there's going to be another one after this.
So we may or may not see you back here in September. It's been great being with you all.
Well, it has been wonderful having you all here.
Absolutely.
To all of you at home, thank you for joining us. That concludes our special coverage of the first presidential debate of 2024. Thank you to all of our guests here in studio. Thank you to all of you. And you can always find continuing coverage on our website anytime, including...
All right, that's the end of that. Yeah, honestly, I feel like half the time, like, Biden wasn't always there. Like, he kept on making faces and everything. Trump was making faces as well, but not as much as Biden. Both candidates are kind of old, and I actually do agree with this from my buddy. He said, these guys are old, and I agree. These guys are freaking old. We got to get somebody younger than there. In fact, I think it was actually a video from Soapbox that stated that we need young enough to know better, but old enough to be experienced in office, right? And unfortunately, we didn't get those two politicians this time. I don't know if they're going to be sticking with, Biden or Trump at this time. I don't know. I think Trump is still going to be in the running. As for Biden, not too sure. We do have seen a lot of negative press with Biden himself in regards to different things that have come up with him. But I'm just not too sure. Now, in regards to, I feel like Trump did answer the question of him accepting the results as long as it's legal and true. I think that's what he was saying. Because if everybody was saying, oh, there's no reason, no, there was no voter fraud. There was voter fraud, and there was cases that got thrown out because they're like, oh, well, it's too late. The election's already over. We're already 3 months in. And like, for instance, I'm going to go back to like something I talked about before. I think it was in North Carolina or Georgia. I forget which state, or South Carolina. One of those states down here, down south, where they were counting votes. They were counting the ballots, and they said, okay, we're closing for the day. And people started leaving, right? People started leaving, and it was just like, then as soon as they saw the people leave, they started pulling out ballots from underneath like tables and stuff and started counting again. And it wasn't until somebody actually turned around and saw it going on that they actually went back and started doing it. And there was video footage of this. I honestly got to remember this year, I got to save some clips so that next time when I do talk about this stuff, I do actually have available to show. But so yes, there was a bit of voter fraud right there, and that was actually a critical situation because it was also all the mail-in ballots from the military that's from across the country, international, that were sending their votes in. It was getting processed through that center. Then, if I remember correctly, there was that incident in PA where they actually had a bunch of mail-in votes. Then, in accordance with their constitution, it said that it was unconstitutional to use mail-in voting. And they said, oh, well, too bad. Voting has been completed. So that's just kind of a whole bunch of baloney. Now, in regards to the Ukrainian, I'm going to talk about foreign. I'm kind of going to go back and forth between the stuff that they talked about today. And if you guys have any input, make sure to leave it in the comment section so we can kind of talk about this, because I'm just kind of rambling at this time. So, in regards to foreign policy, I know I talked to many people from across the globe. I know DeJure is in Canada. I know I probably have viewers all across the nation of all different walks of life, of all different colors, of all different political views. I don't know if I have anybody international other than DeJure, and he's on Rumble. So, and one of the things is I will be saving clips like mad this time around. I didn't do that last time, and oh my god, did we ever see some skeevy business on those videos from the Twitter files. Yes, I agree, DeJure. That's what I'm going to do as well. It's something because me and my buddy, we get into some political debates as well, and I feel like I really, like, when you go and look for that those specific situations, they tend to disappear, right? Anyway, in regards to foreign policy, right now, the whole thing with the Soviet Kazakhstan, baby. Now, in regards to foreign policy, I do feel like, yes, we might be a very strong country. On paper, we are a very strong country. And yes, I can see us, our military is good and everything like that. The thing that I am not happy with our foreign policy is that we're trying to be the big brother of all the other countries, right? And like smacking people around and saying, stop that. Meanwhile, our country is in a devastated position right now. We have illegal immigrants coming in. We got drug issues. We got, homeless. Homeless is up. We got veterans that are all fucked up. And we're not really taking care of our people. I really think on a foreign scale, regardless of which side of the aisle on, that we should step away from foreign policy. And honestly, we should not be giving money to Ukraine anymore because we can't do anything we shouldn't be involved in that. I know it's a huge thing, but I feel like the Democrats this time around, they kind of dropped the ball on foreign policy to begin with, because I feel like when Trump was in office, and everybody kind of stayed quiet. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, I think he's Pooh Bear or whatever his name is. I don't give a shit. Military America is in real trouble now. It's concerning, yeah. What was I saying? So, the North Korea was staying quiet, Russia was staying quiet. I think even China was staying quiet. And I feel like as soon as, Trump didn't get in office, because I feel like he was kind of like negotiating and talking in the background and be like, hey, look, and we've seen him go and talk to, those, the prime minister, presidents, whatever they are. And I feel like he really had that under control, in preventing shit from happening. Right, and now we got this freaking deal between North Korea and Russia as well. You saw that happen, right? Where they said, "Hey, if somebody attacks you, we come and help you." If something like that, that bullshit going on. So that is quite literally going to be World War III. I can see it on the horizon right now. And in regards to the Middle East, I feel very sad for everybody in the Middle East. I'm very concerned about everything that's going on in the Middle East, regardless if it's religious or political or ethnicity or regional. I feel very super bad about the people in the Middle East, but I feel like we should step away from that. Reason being is because the Middle East is just a huge clusterfuck, and it's been a clusterfuck for millions of years. Well, not millions, probably thousands of years, right? Because you got to think, we have a whole bunch of different groups that that kind of are interacting with each other. You got Christians, you got Catholics, you got Jewish people, you got Muslims, Judaism. Pardon me. Mostly Christians, Muslims, and Jews, right? They're all interacting with each other, and that has been bad blood for generations. And when I say generations, I literally mean generations, because you got to think, we were talking about Winnie the Pooh is King Ping. Kim Jong-un is the little rocket man. Got it. Thank you. Because you got to think, this whole thing is pretty much bad blood for any side of the religious spectrum, because you got to think, we had the Crusades in the middle, in the Middle Ages, right, or what would be considered the Middle Ages in Europe, right, where they sent Templars, which were knight endowed warriors, by like priesthoods and shit like that, to the Middle East to reclaim the that area for Christianity. And meanwhile, they were sending people and they were slaughtering along the way, because that's what they were doing, spread Christianity. But at the same time, the Muslims were saying, hey, no, this is the wrong way, and they were killing each other as well. And then same thing with Judaism. I feel bad for them, honestly, because they have a long history of being persecuted. But that is besides the point, because actually a lot of people have been persecuted throughout history, and we just don't talk about them as much. Anyway, it's just more prevalent because of the whole interaction between Judaism, Christianity, Catholicism, Muslims, and all that stuff. And it's just all bad blood. The whole area is just bad blood. If it was up to me, I would be like, hey, look, you guys just got to cut it out, come to a decision, and just everybody kind of relax here, because even this one freaking church, I'm not even joking to you, I think it is, this church is in the Middle East. I'm sure somebody will be able to look me up and fact me on this, but there's this church. It is not complete at all. And the reason being because it was a different sects of, I think, Christianity, right? That claimed the church as theirs. And any decision for this church to be completed must be agreed upon by all of the sects, right? In fact, it's ridiculous because it's so ridiculous that there's this freaking ladder, this wooden ladder that's been sitting up there, up against the church for hundreds of years, and they couldn't make a decision on how to take it down. In fact, it gets such ahead of conflict that they have like open brawls between people of the church, people there say, thou shalt not kill, and love thy neighbor and all this stuff. And I'm sure every other a lot of other religions would say that too. Do not kill, love the neighbor, and maybe some more radical, but we're not going to get into that far. But it's just like this one guy, it was over a decision that nobody was making, and he was like, I'm just going to sit here and wait for you guys to make a decision, right? He went on the roof, he sat in a chair, and then he actually picked up the chair and just put it in the shade because he was hot. Obviously, the Middle East is hot because it's sandy. And it was just, they beat the crap out of him because he decided to move a chair just so he can get a little bit of shade. That kind of shit is fucked up. I would say that in any country. If it was happening here in the U.S., I would say that fucked up as well. In fact, a lot of shit that's going on here in the U.S. is fucked up, especially the modern politics that we have to deal with. Now, I'm not sure how everybody else is feeling about modern politics, and you guys can chip in and talk. We can talk about it. The Middle East has been a hotbed of religious tensions for literally thousands of years. The only time of relative peace were under Third State Solutions, aka Roman Empire and the Great Britain, and even then, yeah, I actually kind of agree with you. It's and probably the Byzantine Empire too, right? I could be anyway. So it's just. To be involved in the Middle East at this point in time, it's just a mess. It's a mess of religious contradictions, because everybody says, "Oh, my religion's better than yours," and so on and so forth. And it's just hundreds of years, thousands of years of bloody mess and anguish. The only way to really solve that is basically kick everybody out of the damn country, and then resettle with other people, and that's it. That's the only way I can think about solving that. Unless you want to nuke the whole place, I have no idea. Honestly, I would never say nuke. That's like crazy. Anyway, so in regards to national policies, childcare, again, economics. Right, I really believe we got to work on our economics, internal policies in order to fix this. We are a nation in debt. We have trillions of dollars in debt, and we keep printing money, and that's where inflation comes from. Right, I feel, if I remember correctly, there's a country down in South America, right, where they kept on printing money. They have so much money printed that they actually make like arts and crafts out of the money because it means literally nothing. Like they can take $10,000 and make a handbag out of $10,000 because they have so much money printed. And that's where inflation is coming from. If you keep printing money, that's what happens. You got to stop printing money, right? We're already in debt. Our country's in debt. Yes, we do have a lot of people that went to college, right, and they have debt, which I totally understand, and I don't want my money to go and pay off somebody else's debt because, and I earned that money, I'm already technically in debt because of our government. Basically, our government is taking like 401ks and stuff like that, and they're just taking it and like trying to pour it back into the economy. I feel like when I go and retire at the ripe old age of 60, whatever, right, which I highly doubt I'm going to be retiring at the age of 60, whatever, there's probably not going to be any money for me there. So, American hegemony kept things in the Middle East to a simmer, kind of boil until their foreign policy drove itself off a cliff after 2020. Thank you, DeJure. And honestly, it's just there's a lot of things we got to fix within the country, and another thing about abortion, right? Now, Trump, I kind of agree with him, is leaving it up to the states to decide. I do feel like there should be regulations, though, that says, look, you can only do it from this to this, but you can figure out within that time frame what's acceptable, right? So let's say second trimester is what the government says. Yeah, second trimester you can have an abortion, unless it's in danger to the mother. Then we will allow the exception, unless it's so at that point in time, right? The local government, the state government should be like, okay, so the government is telling us we can do first and second trimester. How many months do we want to do? We want to do the first 3 months, second 3 months, or how do we want to regulate that, right? And I get it, my body, my choice, right? But unfortunately, that's also a kind of like a catch-22 there, right? Because not for nothing, it takes two to make a child, right? And in regards to rape and incest type of deals, right? Like putting those off to the table, just regular, sex, where you conceive a child, right? You decide to make that decision to have sex in the first place. So if the father should have a voice in regards to this abortion, right? There should be agreement, unless it was rape or incest, right? Our point about the abortion debate is American is pro-choicers say Americans should be more European in an approach to abortion. Ironically, abortion is much stricter in Europe. Thank you, Dejur. So that's in case like rape or incest, that's obviously that's a different bag of bolts, right? That's obviously an exception, right? And also like in regards to like if this is going to harm the mother at 9, like America is like Canada, we essentially have no legal limitations. It's a free for all. Yes, that is true. So we should kind of control it, but also within limitations of our government, where we're splitting out. We give limitations on a government scale, then let the local government try to kind of parse it out to a more manageable level, right? So, because honestly, I feel like after the second trimester, I never had a kid. I obviously don't know a whole much about childbirth. I know my aunts had kids, so I only understand a little bit about it. And the whole thing, I feel like after the second trimester, you're kind of in the boat. You're in the boat to have that child, right? Unless there's something that happens, then obviously you should just be having a kid. Now, in regards to fentanyl, I talked about this before. Even the Mexican cartels, they're like, we're not dealing with this shit. So whoever's cooking fentanyl, my fucking God, you're absolutely goddamn insane, right? Like they are like, if the Mexican cartels, these cartels that are producing cocaine and distributing cocaine and drugs, cocaine and other drugs and weapons and stuff like that, if they say, look, this shit is terrible. If we catch you, we will kill you, right? And then Quebec does send patients to the U.S. for late-term abortions. I mean, late-term abortions. It's sad. Yeah. If the cartels are saying about this whole thing with fentanyl, then that means that is a fucking huge-ass problem, right? Now, in regard to drugs in general, I really do kind of agree that we should have some freedom on it, a little bit of freedom on it. And I'm saying a little bit of freedom because, like in regards to cannabis or weed or whatever you want to call it, Molly Jane, it's when you make it a little more open to the public, right? then people are less likely to go to, the drug dealer down the street, right, who cooked it up in the basement. Because it's more regulation. I would say it's more pharmaceutical regulation, right? Because now it's being monitored. You get a stamp of approval. Even moonshine, right? You got to think moonshine was illegal for the biggest amount of time, right? It was illegal, and then, right? In fact, I actually used to watch a show called Moonshiners, right, where people were actually still doing it now down south. A couple people were actually went legitimate, right, which did cost them a lot of money, but in the long run, after going to a legitimate source, getting all their licenses and stuff like that, they turned out for the better, as far as I know, because I haven't watched Moonshiners in years. So you got to it's, again, government regulations. I think if we regulate it a little bit more and let it out a little bit more free, maybe, we can knock down some of this, opioid addictions and, cocaine addictions and stuff like that. Fentanyl on a whole, I don't know where, that came from. I have no idea how people even made it, and I don't even want to know it. So, yeah. Whew. Now, in regards to illegal immigrants, like I said, I'm fine with immigrants coming into the country. I am. I'm not for open borders, but I'm fine if they went through the due process to get into the country, right? Get all the documents signed, all the T's crossed, I's dotted, and all that stuff, right? Then I'm okay with it. I'm okay with having people coming into the country. I'm sure that's with every country, right? Fentanyl is pouring in from Mexico and China, and the cartels practically have Mexican law enforcement agency on the run. I think even the Mexican military doesn't want to take on the cartels. Yeah, I feel like that's a huge thing too, DeJure. So in regards to, what was I talking about? Shit, I lost my train of thought. In regards to, we were just talking about guns, illegal. That's right, illegal immigrants. So I'm fine again with immigrants coming into the country as long as they're coming in legally. The issue that I'm having problems with is that these illegal immigrants that are coming into the country, and we have these sanctuary cities. And actually, this has been an issue for a long time now. Not sanctuary cities per se, but illegal immigrants, which honestly probably happens everywhere, right? But for the illegal immigrants to get into the country, then they're going to these sanctuary cities, and these sanctuary cities can't freaking keep up with this. They can't process it and everything like that. And honestly, it's terrible. Like I'm going to use New York City as an example. So New York City has a housing crisis right now, right? Because they can't house all the immigrants that are coming into the country, and they're buying up these hotels, right, and housing these people in the hotels, kicking out tourists and stuff just to house these immigrants in there, and the places are getting destroyed. Illegal hot plates. They're removing illegal hot plates. People are have 4 or 5 people in a single bedroom. It's absolutely terrible, and it's immigration. Thank you. And it's just causing a mess. In fact, it's getting to the point where people can't. There's no room for them to be housed, and that's a critical issue here with the whole immigration thing that we have going on currently, right? And the other thing is, we're trying to board all these people in, right? And meanwhile, we have homeless people, yes, people with mental disorders, right? And then we also have veterans that are homeless already. That should be, set priority above the immigrants because they are citizens over foreign nationals. And it's terrible. I feel terrible for the people that are getting stuck in this because these are people that are actually escaping issues in other countries, right? But at the same time, there have been recorded cases of these immigrants that are coming in that are destroying things. They're R-wording girls and M-wording these people and squatting illegally. Yes, I can say that one. That's fine. Secure the border, make sanctuary cities and sanctuary states illegal. Begin rounding up, deporting illegals. Strictly curtail legal immigration for at least 5 years. Cut down on student visas. There you go. Makes total sense. So, and it's not that like we got gangs in New York City right now, motorbike gangs that are quite literally going around on their motorbikes and stealing stuff. You know, that is like weird shit. You know, that's third world country type of shit that's going on, you know? And it's terrible. It is absolutely terrible what they're going through. And we're getting all these people in, and we're getting the good and the bad, right? And it's absolutely terrible how it's going. And with how it's going in New York alone, New York City alone, just because it's a blue state, blue city, from what the news I'm getting, it's absolutely, if they say one thing, but it's absolutely the other. You know, you got people stealing left and right, you know, major stores closing down like Walgreens, CVS. You got malls moving out because of, you know, smash and grabs, you know, lax on crime. I think it's like $1,000 is a felony, right? So if you go and you steal less than $1,000, you're fine. And there's been cases of people actually stealing stuff from the store, then going out on the sidewalk and selling the same stuff they just stole from the store. And it's like a black market. It's like almost Mad Max, honestly. It's from what I'm getting. There could be other import the third world, become the third world, cautionary tale, all of Europe. Yeah. So, yeah, and I can trail on about this. Honestly, the one YouTuber that I follow, Cash Jordan, I think that's what his name. You know what? I'll pull that up right now. Yes, I am referring to a different YouTuber for this one because I don't have all the information. But this guy, he actually lives in New York City, so he's more like sensitive to this. So Cash Jordan, yeah, if you follow this guy, he talks about like the subway. He talks about like migrants. It begins armed migrants rob police in New York City. New York City banned evictions, abandoned subway, permanently secretly attacks poor people. He does a lot of like cool videos and very informative videos, especially in New York City. And he does use the current media information, right? So it's not just him talking about it. He's making a commentary on the current media and using it to show examples. In fact, I think in one of the videos, he actually went into a store and he accidentally lifted up a security device because it wasn't locked. Yeah. So yeah, check him out. Cash Jordan. So, he has more information about New York City. And I think, honestly, I don't know what else I can really talk about the politics and any more of the other politics. I did miss a couple pieces here and there. Obviously, I have a short attention span, but like in the beginning, I missed a portion. I think it was just the intro. I'm hoping it was just the intro. Honestly, it's just on a whole, right? I feel like between Trump and Biden right now, if I just start out as nothing, plain as day, I feel like they both did terrible. Both of them, because I feel like they started kind of pointing fingers at each other. You know, I feel like they really started pointing fingers at each other, and it was just, oh my God, terrible. It was just terrible on the whole, honestly. So anyway, I think that's it for tonight. If I missed something, leave a comment down in the comment section. You can always, I don't mind you saying, hey, look, I don't think you're right. All right, fine. Prove that I'm not right. I'm fine. I want to talk about this stuff. Like the only time when I get like cranky about it is when we're talking about the presidents themselves. I'm more about the policy more and less about the presidents, because in either case, right? And I say this strictly across the board. First of all, what New York did against Trump, right, for this conviction, was freaking bogus, right? That I feel like that was just bogus straight through. But on the same side, they have now set a dangerous precedent, where if it goes through for Trump, they should do this with every single politician in the United States. And I mean that. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, green, blue, orange, purple, whatever freaking color you are. If they go through with this, you should do it with every single scummy politician then. From president to mayor. Sorry, I missed most of it. Is he check my Discord settings again? Don't know what's going on there. That is fine to jerk. Just remember, Wednesday night, I am live streaming to Rumble, Kick, and Odyssey. That's right. Wednesday nights are usually my exclusive for Rumble, Kick, and Odyssey chats, videos. So make sure to check out Rumble, Odyssey, and Kick. Links are down below. And it's going to be 6:30 or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, yeah, Wednesday nights are usually those nights. Then usually, I think Tuesdays and Thursdays will be playing with the boys, depending on when they tell me when we're going to do it. So, anywho, I think that's enough of politics for today. I think I tired myself out on politics because it's all bullshit to begin with. Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed the stream. I know we had quite a bit of viewers from the Twitch and YouTube crowd. I thank you all for tuning in. I really hope you did enjoy and, follow me. Obviously, Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and obviously the random pop-up stream when I feel like it. I do if you do want to help support the channel, do have a merchandise store. Link down below. I also have another YouTube channel called Wolf Woodworking and Laser Engraving, which is my hobby channel, which I actually run a whole Etsy store for that. Basically, that hobby channel is about me just doing various hobby things, like putting together, models, doing some woodworking stuff, laser engraving some stuff. So, in fact, I actually took a whole bunch of videos today of laser engraving because I'm actually working to actually go to a crafts fair. In fact, I got documentation here that I should fill out. I'll fill this out tomorrow because the next thing would be July 7th. So, and I think I gotta go pay that too to get a table and everything. So, anywho, everyone have a nice night, and yeah, I hope this stream was very informative. Yeah, anyway, good night, everyone.